Incoming message.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. I'm putting on my investigative reporter hat today, and I'm bringing you a forensic brief that is going to completely rewire how you look at modern media and invisible power. We aren't here to chase wild internet rumors or, entertain ourselves with alien cover-ups. We're here to investigate a single structural theory, a hypothesis so massive that if it's accurate, it reframes absolutely everything we think we know about power, information, and who actually controls the world. We're looking at the hard evidence, the declassified history, and the digital architecture of truth itself.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our true north for this investigation changes the fundamental question from what are they hiding to who is they? Look, most theories out there are just competing for your attention, focusing on isolated little secrets. But we're cutting through all that noise to focus on a systemic, structural investigation. We aren't asking what's being hidden anymore. We're asking a much more profound forensic question. Who is controlling the information pipeline to begin with? It shifts our entire perspective from just looking at individual pieces of gossip to actually analyzing the machinery of the narrative itself.
To do this rigorously, I've prepared an investigative dossier. We'll cover the one true conspiracy, 1970s physical control, the digital evolution, digital weaponization, the lab leak pivot, and finally, the final verdict. Section 1. The One True Conspiracy. We're reframing the investigation.
Think about this for a second, almost like you're a skeptical editor reviewing a major pitch. What if one single theory makes all the others completely irrelevant? If the central charge we're investigating today is accurate, it doesn't just add another crazy story to the pile. No, it completely reframes who actually commands global information. We're treating this like a legal investigation, laying out the absolute strongest evidence to uncover something structural rather than just chasing shadows.
Moving to Section 2, 1970s Physical Narrative Control. Let's establish some historical precedent.
Now, what's really interesting here is that absolutely none of this is theory. It is documented, declassified reality. In the 1970s, it was confirmed that intelligence agencies were running illegal domestic programs. We've got COINTELPRO, we've got MKUltra, and critically for our investigation, we have Operation Mockingbird. That was a program that literally inserted CIA operatives into major news outlets to manually shape the narrative. I know, it sounds wildly implausible, kind of like something out of a spy thriller, right? But the Church Committee in 1975 proved it was entirely real. This grounds our whole explainer in absolute, undeniable fact.
And that brings us to the great pivot of our investigation. You see, the official story claims these physical, manual programs of media interference were exposed in the 70s and were just promptly shut down. But our investigative hypothesis asks a really uncomfortable question. What if they didn't shut down? What if manual media interference simply modernized? What if these operations just went underground, evolved, and got much, much better at hiding?
Which leads us to Section 3. The digital surveillance evolution. Time to map the capability.
We're pivoting away from the physical, analog tactics of the 70s, where operatives had to literally sit in a newsroom, to the vast, invisible emergence of modern digital tools. To make sure we don't get lost in the weeds here, we're using a strict logical framework to verify these modern theories. Step 1. Establish the historical precedent, which we just did. Step 2. Identify the modern digital capability, and Step 3, analyze actual narrative shifts to see this capability in action. This methodical approach is the only real way to separate fact from fiction.
So let's zoom in on Step 2. The year is 2013. This is when Edward Snowden released documents proving that the NSA was monitoring the entire internet in real time. But here is the crucial detail that so many people glossed over. The massive digital infrastructure required to pull that off, it wasn't just built overnight in 2012. It had been built and expanded over decades. The programs we found out about were simply the tip of an iceberg we couldn't see. It proved that massive, covert digital capabilities were operating right under our noses.
So the crucial point is this. Let's connect the dots. If the CIA was physically inserting stories into the media back in 1970, and we know that covert infrastructure evolved exponentially into the digital age by 2013, then it is entirely plausible that today's news is actively being shaped by an invisible intelligence apparatus. We know that declassified capacity existed. The only real question is, did the intelligence community just stop, or did they just swap out their typewriters for algorithms?
Section 4. Weaponizing digital infrastructure. Let's look at the modern evidence.
Now that we know the digital infrastructure is there,
We need to examine hard evidence of modern, automated information warfare capabilities. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. In 2017, whistleblower Reality Winner leaked NSA documents. Now yes, those documents showed Russian interference in the 2016 election, but critically, they revealed something absolutely astounding. The NSA have the active capability to perfectly frame foreign countries for cyber attacks. They could digitally fabricate an event to make an attack look like it came from Russia or anywhere else when it actually originated in the US. The official capacity to digitally manipulate reality exists. We literally have the receipts.
So we need to redefine modern information warfare. We're no longer just talking about dropping propaganda leaflets from planes or paying a journalist to write a hit piece. We're talking about a transition to automated, algorithmic narrative control. This is a highly sophisticated, invisible infrastructure that can shape public perception at a massive scale. For any skeptical editor watching, this is exactly how far the tactics have advanced since the Church Committee days.
Section 5. The lab leak pivot point. Let's analyze these narrative shifts.
Let's move to step 3 of our framework and see how this builds in a real-world scenario we basically all just lived through. Look at this stark timeline. In 2020, the COVID-19 lab leak theory wasn't just debated, it was actively suppressed across major digital platforms. It was officially labeled a quote-unquote conspiracy theory. If you talked about it, you were algorithmically buried. Then, fast forward to 2024, and the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee releases a report concluding that the lab leak hypothesis is in fact credible. Maybe not definitively proven, but credible enough to be an official stance.
Here's the kicker. The narrative didn't suddenly change in 2024 because a massive, undeniable new piece of initial evidence was unearthed that morning. The narrative changed because the people controlling the narrative decided to change it. The labeling of emerging truths as a conspiracy and then quietly shifting them to credible is a literal tool of information warfare. It directly connects back to our historical precedent. It shows us that official labels are a mechanism of control, not necessarily a reflection of objective truth.
Section 6. The Transparency Conspiracy. Let's get to the final verdict.
Okay, let's summarize the core forensic argument impartially, just connecting the dots of this explainer. We aren't saying there's some cartoonish, shadowy counsel smoking cigars in a back room somewhere. What we are saying is there is a documented, declassified history of intelligence agencies manipulating the narrative. We are saying that digital infrastructure to do it globally, at scale, currently exists right now. The only actual evidence we have that they stopped doing this is their official word. And as we saw clearly from the 1970s, their official word isn't worth very much. This isn't sensationalism, folks. It's just a systemic analysis of power.
Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought to end on. Is the lack of transparency actually the biggest conspiracy of all? If this invisible infrastructure of power is operating totally unchecked, shaping the very news you consume and the algorithms you scroll through every day, then we've been fundamentally misunderstanding how the modern world works. The evidence is there. The capability is there. The only question left is whether you'll ever look at an official narrative the exact same way again. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you next time.
Come to me, chickens, cock-a-doodle-doo.